Diana captivated hearts and dominated headlines, yet behind the public image of royal duty lay a hidden life marked by marital betrayal. Between her magnificent wedding and her televised admission of adultery unfolded a story of turmoil and court rivalry, with Camilla Parker B.S. at its center. Charles found his young wife very different from the sophisticated women he had known before, including actress Susan George and Zoe Solis, while Lady Tron, the wife of a close friend, also claimed an affair with him. Divorcee Jane Ward was considered suitable for dating but not for marriage. Diana appeared perfect, yet she proved capable of carrying out royal duties while quietly seeking to undermine her husband. By her engagement in 1981, the aristocratic Diana had grown into a captivating teenager, linking the Spencer dynasty to the royal house of Windsor. 11 years later, at the time of her father's death, her marriage was already in its final stage. Charles's lasting love for Camilla and Diana's resulting affairs shattered the royal couple. Their unhappiness was visible during their final tour together in Korea in 1992, the last banquet and overseas duties for what had once been the great hope of the British monarchy. They were living separate lives. Diana sought comfort elsewhere, including with a bodyguard, and 5 years after her wedding had a long affair with a cavalry officer, the only relationship she publicly admitted. She shared an intense closeness with an old friend, and a secretly taped private call became known as Squiddy Gate. She was linked to a famous rugby player and blamed for the collapse of his marriage, fell in love with a married art dealer and harassed his home with hundreds of silent calls, and after her divorce wished to marry a heart surgeon. Finally, a summer romance with a playboy ended in their tragic deaths. Despite these affairs, many prefer to remember Diana as the Princess of Wales, stylish, charming, and one of the royal family's greatest assets, the jewel in the crown. After her marriage collapsed, she searched for new purpose. Proudly addressing audiences in New York, she became an international advocate against landmines, visited countries on behalf of major charities, and continued attending official engagements. Yet, as a semi-detached royal, her role felt undefined. Determined to use her fame for good, she championed the disadvantaged and afflicted. In December 1995, she received the Humanitarian of the Year award in New York for her charity work, and that same month the Queen wrote recommending divorce. In the United States, Diana experienced the warmth and acceptance she felt were missing within the royal court, which largely sided with Charles. This outcome was far from what she imagined when she and Charles faced the press at their engagement. Diana later reflected that at 19 you believe you are ready for everything and understand what lies ahead. She barely grasped Charles's complex personality. He was a Cambridge graduate. She left school at 16. He had experienced intense romances, some with married women. She had no previous lovers. Charles was 12 years older, and Diana was almost a child, mirroring the age gap between her own parents when they married, her father 30 and her mother 18. Her mother, Frances, shocked society by leaving her family for another man, described as strong-willed and hot-headed. A bitter divorce and custody battle left Diana and her siblings with their father, a former equerry to the Queen, while her sister Jane's marriage to the Queen's assistant private secretary kept the family close to the royal court. As a bridesmaid, Diana held an idealized dream of marriage and family life. Unsophisticated even for her age, she often spoke of marrying, having many children, and staying together forever. After failing her exams, she worked as a kindergarten assistant in London and met Charles, then dating her sister Sarah, at the family estate, Althorpe. He later recalled her as lively, amusing, and attractive at 16. During their brief courtship, the press pursued her relentlessly, convinced Charles had finally found a bride. Few previous women had been serious prospects. Dana Sheffield's romance ended when a past affair surfaced, and Jane Wellesley, a duke's daughter, had once been favored. Charles, cautious and dutiful as Prince of Wales, feared damaging the family reputation and was hesitant with women, often waiting for them to make the first move. Through his passion for polo, Charles met the woman who would dominate his life, Camilla Shand. From the county set, unsuitable for marriage to a prince in the early 1970s but acceptable as a discreet companion, she possessed an earthiness that drew him in. Among many eager admirers, she stood out in jeans fastened with a safety pin and untamed hair. Their attraction was immediate, but duty called Charles to his naval career. After a brief affair, he left for sea, and Camilla resumed her long relationship with Army officer Andrew Parker B.S., marrying him in 1973. Andrew was regarded in high society as an attractive and desirable match, and Camilla had pursued him for years. She knew she could not marry Charles. She was not a virgin, not aristocratic enough, and understood that courtiers sought a bride whose image suited a postage stamp. Accepting this, she supported Diana's candidacy, confident the young bride would not threaten her place. The engagement interview revealed their emotional divide. Diana was clearly devoted, while Charles's remark, "Whatever in love means," suggested ambiguity. As the royal engagements began, Diana quickly connected with the public, especially children, despite her nervousness. Yet early missteps followed. She wore a strapless black gown to a recital at Goldsmith Hall in London, a choice deemed too daring and inappropriate for royalty. She later admitted she had not realized she was now seen as royal. To her, black felt elegant and grown up. Critics noted that royal protocol discouraged black except in mourning, and photographers' angles made the dress appear overly revealing. Princess Grace of Monaco, present that evening, teased that things would only become more difficult. Support from the royal family was limited. Princess Margaret offered practical advice, but generally Diana was expected to cope alone. The months leading to the wedding were tense, as jealousy over Camilla and uncertainty about her future role weighed heavily. No one seemed to define her purpose beyond walking down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral. The Spencers, proud and aristocratic, sometimes viewed themselves as more traditionally English than the German-origin House of Windsor, and Diana's mother had warned her about marrying a position rather than a man. Though Diana spoke of hope on her wedding day, she had nearly cancelled it days before due to fears about Camilla. As she walked through St. Paul's Cathedral, she spotted her rival in the congregation. Camilla would remain the third presence in the marriage. Even as the newlyweds departed for their honeymoon, reminders persisted. Among the official escort was Andrew Parker B.S., Camilla's husband and a friend of Princess Anne. He remained within the royal circle, and jokes later suggested he had sacrificed his wife for his country by overlooking her affair. Camilla understood her role. She believed she could remain Charles's mistress while married to Andrew, have his children, and still hold her place as the Prince of Wales's closest confidant. On honeymoon aboard the royal yacht Britannia, Diana discovered how strong Camilla's influence remained. Charles had kept her photographs and worn cufflinks engraved with their initials. After leaving Britannia, the newlyweds traveled on to Scotland, but the shadow over their marriage had already settled in. Diana's hopes were shattered and she no longer trusted her husband. She grew deeply suspicious of Charles and Camilla. Even when she could not see them together, she felt she could sense their connection. She was said to have an intuitive awareness and, although she may not have known that Charles and Camilla were together in bed in Buckingham Palace the night before the royal wedding after the ball, she believed they were still in contact. Signs suggested that Camilla seemed aware of Diana's movements, and Diana clung to the hope that once she had her husband to herself on their honeymoon, everything would change. She believed that intimacy and married life might make Charles forget Camilla and focus solely on his wife. While posing for the press at Balmoral, they successfully concealed the truth. By then Diana had already developed bulimia, which she blamed on the looming presence of Camilla. At the same time, she and Charles were finding it increasingly difficult to connect, and she felt unable to compete with the older and more experienced Camilla. This struggle was extremely hard for her. Some believed that sexual allure was not her main strength. Despite her beauty, she was not seen as particularly seductive, whereas Camilla was thought to possess a certain sexual aura and power. In that sense, Diana was considered to have little chance. The births of William and Harry did not create the happy family she had longed for. During a 1986 holiday with the Spanish royal family in Majorca, Diana was secretly suffering from bulimia, and Charles left early to return to Camilla. Diana wanted a daughter to complete her family, but after Harry's birth the marriage was effectively over. She had always hoped for a girl after her sons, yet by that stage the relationship had deteriorated so badly that it was unlikely to happen. For a time there was an uneasy truce. Charles maintained his relationship with Camilla while Diana concealed her own affairs and publicly supported her husband. In 1990, when Charles broke his arm playing polo and it failed to heal properly, Diana performed the role of the caring wife, collecting him from hospital. However, once out of sight, they went their separate ways. The exact timing of events in their relationship remained difficult to determine, but by the time Prince Harry was born the strain was already evident. The emotional distance between the couple was widely noticed, and the press began tracking how often they were apart. Under constant speculation, they were compelled to appear together publicly. Diana was suspected of leaking stories to the media, and as her marriage deteriorated and she felt unheard, she became determined to gain a voice. Promoting herself became, in part, her way of responding to the situation with Charles and Camilla, and she proved highly skilled at it. In the early years, however, the couple had worked well together, with Diana herself saying they were a good team. Her radiant beauty captivated people worldwide, including during tours such as in Australia. Initially, Charles seemed proud of her and occasionally showed affection, but over time he grew jealous of her immense popularity. Diana realized that cameras captured every detail of her expressions and gestures, and she used that awareness to subtly signal displeasure with Charles, even through carefully timed public interactions. Some later described her as becoming an extremely difficult wife, yet it was also acknowledged that when they first married there had been genuine love, even if it was brief. Camilla re-entered Charles's life in the mid-1980s, when he claimed his marriage had irretrievably broken down. Their secret affair strengthened his fragile ego, and her role as both lover and confidant was known only to a small circle of trusted friends. Very little was publicly known about Camilla at the time. Although those close to Charles were aware he had seen her both when she was single and when she was married, the press remained unaware for years that he was involved in an ongoing adulterous relationship with a woman he loved. Diana eventually changed that by allowing stories to appear in the press that portrayed her rival negatively, and the media soon began pursuing Camilla intensely. On one occasion, Charles even had to leave her home quickly, hiding under a blanket in the back of a car while photographers chased them. The affair became impossible to hide when a taped phone call between Charles and Camilla, later called Camillagate, was made public in January 1993, shortly after Charles and Diana's official separation. The recording confirmed Diana's long-held suspicions and exposed the depth of their intimacy in often embarrassing detail. Diana reportedly took great satisfaction in reading sections of the transcripts aloud at breakfast in Kensington Palace, finding irony in the way her husband, who had insisted he was right, was now publicly embarrassed. Her beauty and charisma drew widespread sympathy for her as a wronged wife, and even Prince Philip wrote to her expressing disbelief that anyone would leave her for Camilla. Yet Diana also had her own secrets. While outwardly supporting the Queen and the royal family, she engaged in a series of questionable affairs, the first in 1986 with her married bodyguard Barry Manicky. As her marriage collapsed, she found comfort in the man whose duty kept him constantly by her side. He was later dismissed for over-familiarity. Diana told some people they were lovers but denied it to others, describing their connection as simply a close relationship. It was suggested that Manicky may have crossed professional boundaries and become too close, leading to resentment among palace staff. Despite personal tensions, the royal marriage continued at an official level, and Charles and Diana still represented the nation abroad, including a visit to Japan in 1989. Diana appeared the perfect and stylish ambassador, even while privately involved in a passionate relationship with cavalry officer James Hewitt. Hewitt later bought a manor house with proceeds from a book about Diana, but it was at his family home in Devon that she experienced a more ordinary domestic life, observed by her bodyguard. This private companionship likely prevented a complete emotional collapse, as she was deeply unhappy and depressed at the time, and Hewitt's calm and steady nature gave her reassurance, care, and affection that were psychologically important. Diana later admitted in a Panorama interview that their relationship went beyond friendship, openly acknowledging that she adored him and was in love. She eventually ended the affair twice, first when he was posted to Germany and refused to change his orders, which she saw as a betrayal, and again after the Gulf War when press reports about their relationship made it dangerously public. Although he comforted her during her lowest period, he was also viewed critically and seen by some as opportunistic. The death of her father in March 1992 removed a crucial emotional support from her life. Charles, mindful of public image, acted the caring husband, but the growing emotional gap between them was increasingly obvious. Some believed he was relieved when Diana became involved with Hewitt, as it allowed him to continue his life with Camilla while Diana was occupied and cared for. He no longer loved her in a romantic sense and saw her more as a burden in his life. When the Hewitt affair ended, tensions escalated further, and Diana sought revenge by secretly cooperating with a sensational biography while publicly denying involvement and continuing her royal duties, including hospice visits. The Morton biography destroyed the fairy tale image of Charles and Diana, exposing the private reality behind the monarchy and ensuring that nothing would ever be the same. Although she soon regretted her decision, the public largely sympathized with her while the establishment supported Charles. Her life then came under intense scrutiny when a taped phone call to her friend James Gilby was mysteriously leaked to the media. The recording, known as Dianagate or Squidgygate, revealed her personal emotions and further exposed the turmoil of her private life. Diana believed certain material had been released to seriously harm her, saying her life felt extremely difficult, complicated, and like real torture, and that behind the ceremony of royal life there was deep personal unhappiness. She often felt very sad and described her husband's staff as the enemy, accusing Charles's friends of spreading stories that she was mentally unstable and of encouraging his affair with Camilla by providing safe places and doing nothing to save the royal marriage. She felt they should have tried, because the marriage was important to the monarchy and the country, but instead they briefed against her in a cruel way, portraying her as psychologically disturbed, and although they were good friends to him, they caused significant harm. Diana also had some unwise liaisons, including one with rugby player Will Carling, and she was linked to the breakdown of his marriage. It was said he had often been seen with her at a beach hut owned by the royal family on the Norfolk coast near Sandringham, where they spent time together. For Prince Charles, the idea of his wife being involved with the captain of the England rugby team was seen as shocking, yet he failed to see that if he was allowed extramarital relationships, she might feel entitled to the same. As her marriage deteriorated, Diana made subtle gestures to gain sympathy, famously posing at the Taj Mahal as a symbol of her solitude, but her search for love also damaged her reputation. She fell in love with a handsome art dealer named Oliver, and when he chose to remain with his wife and children, she reportedly made numerous silent phone calls to their home. His very wealthy wife controlled much of his life, and he was also a friend of Charles and Camilla, part of their trusted circle. In 1994, Charles worked with his biographer Jonathan Dimbleby on a television program in which he admitted his affair with Camilla, and on the same night Diana overshadowed him by wearing a striking dress, continuing the so-called War of the Waleses. Diana dated different men both in pursuit of love and to provoke Charles, but she genuinely wished to marry Pakistan-born Dr. Hasnat Khan, whom she admired deeply for his intelligence and brilliance as a heart surgeon. She would visit him at Brompton Hospital and meet him privately, yet he kept his distance, which frustrated and intrigued her even more. What she truly wanted was companionship, admiration, and to be seen with someone who would irritate her husband, a motive said to lie behind many of her actions. She was deeply unhappy and constantly searching for solutions, even consulting fortune-tellers in difficult periods, hoping for answers, a way out, and anything that might comfort her and help her continue. Meanwhile, Charles and Camilla traveled abroad together, including a holiday in Turkey in 1989, and photographs confirmed their affair was real. At a private party that summer, Diana confronted Camilla about her relationship with Charles, but nothing changed. There were also trips to Florence and visits to a house once given to Camilla's great-grandmother Alice Keppel by King Edward VII, where Camilla shared Charles's interest in painting. Camilla was not the only confidant. Lady Tryon, whom Charles called Kanga, was also close to him and served as someone he could trust and consult outside the royal entourage. Despite her own mistakes, Diana regularly sought advice from those around her, not only from private secretaries but also from ordinary staff such as her police bodyguard Ken Worf. She even asked him that if anything ever happened to her, he should let people know what she was really like. She frequently asked for opinions, constantly bouncing ideas off everyone, including staff, dressers, chauffeurs, and others, and she was willing to listen to their responses rather than rely solely on her own judgment. After officially separating from Charles, Ken Worf accompanied her on visits such as a 1993 trip to Nepal on behalf of the Red Cross and the Leprosy Mission. She showed a remarkable ability to connect with people from all social and political backgrounds, a skill she developed herself, and she had a unique bond with the sick and suffering, famously touching leprosy patients and AIDS sufferers and challenging social stigma, which became one of her greatest humanitarian achievements. She appeared to feel a sense of destiny in this role, influenced partly by her grandmother Cynthia Spencer, who was also known for her charitable nature. However, her popularity and compassion were not enough to keep her within the royal family. During the 1992 tour of South Korea, the tension between Diana and Charles was clear in their expressions and body language, and they were nicknamed the Glums shortly before their separation was officially announced by Buckingham Palace. Diana appeared briefly at Sandringham for Christmas, but her life as a semi-detached royal soon became unsustainable. She attempted to reduce her public duties in order to find a better balance between a meaningful public role and a more private life, a decision driven largely by intense press intrusion. Many charities lost her patronage, yet she soon returned to the public stage while also trying to live as a private citizen. The paparazzi relentlessly targeted her, especially during gym visits and even while she visited her therapist, Susie Orbach, chasing and provoking her for valuable photographs. She was rarely free from harassment, even on holidays, and often had to react to being surrounded by photographers. Separated from her husband and increasingly isolated from the royal court, Diana depended on a close circle of female friends, both older and younger, who tried to support her during periods of intense pressure. She was in a deeply difficult situation. Her husband did not love her, the press constantly pursued her, people sold information about her, and she could hardly go out without being photographed. At the same time, Camilla also faced media scrutiny but handled the press with a tougher and more robust attitude. The year after Charles admitted adultery, Diana gave her famous Panorama interview, stating that there were 3 people in the marriage, making it crowded, and she even questioned Charles's suitability for kingship. The Queen eventually insisted on a divorce to end the impossible situation between her son and his estranged wife, despite Diana's reluctance. While the public strongly supported Diana, the establishment largely backed Charles, and the conflict divided the country. With the divorce, Diana lost the title of Her Royal Highness along with many royal privileges, and without palace support she had to rely more on friends for arrangements. Although she received a financial settlement of £17 million, it did not fully compensate for the loss of her royal status. She became a global celebrity in her own right, admired for her warmth and spontaneity, and began seeking fulfillment beyond Britain. She had visited Pakistan in 1991 and returned shortly before her death to raise funds for a cancer hospital, and she admired the strong family values she observed in Muslim societies. Symbolically letting go of her past, she auctioned many of her dresses for charity, including the dress worn on the night Charles admitted his affair, raising millions at Christie's in New York. She skillfully reinvented her image as a glamorous yet independent woman who still retained royal allure, which appealed greatly to the American public, and she felt comfortable in the United States where she had many influential friends. Among the notable figures she met was Henry Kissinger, who described her as a princess in her own right. She aligned herself with the sick, the suffering, and the disadvantaged, earning humanitarian recognition, though this did not stop her divorce or secure the ambassadorial role she had hoped for. Her empathy, charm, and ability to connect with people of all backgrounds made her an exceptional public figure. In January 1997, Diana visited Angola to raise awareness about landmines, an action that displeased parts of the British establishment, whose critics labeled her unpredictable, though she defended her efforts as highlighting a global problem. She and Charles shared custody of their sons, and William's confirmation in May 1997 was the last occasion they were seen together as a family. She then faced a lonely summer in London while her son stayed with Charles and after the end of her relationship with Hasnat Khan, and she was ready for new experiences. An invitation from tycoon Mohammed Al Fayed to stay at his holiday home in the south of France led to a romance with his son Dodi, a controversial but charming figure. They traveled on his yacht and were constantly followed by photographers, with rumors suggesting that she sometimes tipped off selected press to send signals to the men who had disappointed her. After visiting the Paris home once owned by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, Diana and Dodi stayed at the Ritz Hotel, owned by Dodi's father. Attempting to avoid paparazzi, they left through a back exit with the hotel's head of security, Henri Paul, driving at high speed when their car crashed in a tunnel on August 31st. Dodi and Henri Paul died instantly, and Diana later died in hospital from her injuries. Many believed that with proper security the crash might not have occurred. Her body was returned on a royal plane, and her funeral became a historic global event, with a royal flag covering her coffin and a procession including William, Harry, Charles, Philip, and her brother Earl Spencer, who remarked that a woman named after the goddess of hunting had become the most hunted person of the modern age. From the time of her wedding, people felt personally connected to Diana because of her emotional warmth and human appeal, and her death was widely seen as an immense and almost unbelievable tragedy, ending in a way that many compared to the scale and sorrow of a Shakespearean tragedy.